If I had to choose one way to describe the growth in people as of late, I would have to say it is a shift away from artificiality. People are irritated with being deceived by fake personas, misleading products, and insincere advertising. Now, more than ever, people are craving honesty and genuineness. What's happening is a strengthened aversion to mass production. Issues inherent with mass production are exacerbated by its increasing abundance in society and by the advent of social media, which perpetuates artificiality in people themselves. The two most relevant being the lack of personalization and the difficulty associated with tracing any humanity back to the product. As Henry Ford now famously once said, "You can have it in any color so long as it's black." There is no mass production in entertainment mediums, as they are talent industries, but similar problems persist. Less focus is placed on producing the product as cheaply as possible, but often just as much is placed on ensuring the product appeal to the largest possible audience. This is how mass production removes personalization from the product. In games, this takes the form of crafting the story, characters, and gameplay in a way that appeals to the most possible people. Through this method, all people are treated the same, as an aggregate of all people. This is the difference between Starbucks and the stereotypical Portland small business coffee shop. Sure, we like to make fun of those shops, but the customization offered and the quality of the product definitely blows Starbucks out of the water. And each year we seem to be getting fewer games that aren't massive AAA titles, with large numbers of people being granted important artistic input. The game is bound to turn out as some aggregate when there are that many people providing their own creative ideas. A person's individuality and novel additions are sure to be cancelled or muddled by another's when all have equal input on a subject. If there's an idea that everyone can agree upon, then the idea probably doesn't speak to anyone individually, but speaks to everyone diminutively. No single developer is liable when this occurs, because it is implicit in the system. Developers on their own can be incredibly talented people. Former employees of large video game companies have been responsible for some of the best video games of the past decade. Their creations prove they are incredibly talented and have fantastic ideas on their own. It's the structure that's the issue. What makes indie games so different is the fact that they are developed by either one person or a small team of people. Auteurism, the idea that a creator's individual quirks, interests, and personality shine through in their creation, making it unmistakably theirs, is very much present in these games. In film, where this idea first developed, this category of creators includes names such as Kubrick, Hitchcock, and Wells. Huge, instantly recognizable names who are often associated with some of the best and distinctive films of all time. Some modern examples might be Tarantino, Miyazaki, or Linklater. These are people who clearly have ideas to express and things to say. Their voices are heard clearly, and they are inseparable from the art they create. Many creators in the indie gaming scene can be viewed as auteurs, but that's to be expected from any media form. Moving past, however, it becomes much more difficult to name some. The obvious first candidate is Kojima, but from there, you have to do a little thinking. This thinking may provide such names as Molyneux, Ueda, Schaefer, Levine, Taro, Cage, Suda51, and Sweary65. There are certainly others, but by my estimation, these are the most well-known. This may seem like a good number, but most of these people are not that big, and rarely do they forefront the largest games being produced each year. The percentage of games released each year they are involved in is minuscule, and some of these people are not very active anymore. More often than not, they are involved in smaller productions that essentially play second fiddle to the largest releases of the year. I certainly don't want to sound as though I hate all team-designed titles, or that anyone should feel bad for enjoying them. They take a different approach to entertaining, and that's fine. My argument is that they are not going to speak to any one of us individually to the same degree as a game from one of these auteur directors could. Games created in this manner have the potential to capture more of the human experience and allow us to relate to a more consistent message. Character development and story elements certainly feel more forced in games that surrender significant creative control to a large group of people. They feel standard and familiar, like they were taken directly from another game created using the same design philosophy. They are so similar because they are the median of all human experience, originating from the aggregation. This median is what people have defined to be good, because it is standard and everyone can relate at least a little bit. Characters and stories are very structured and set in stone in terms of progression through this method. It feels as though the most generic story arc is taken and ported into the game due to a preconceived notion of that being the right way to tell a story. That's not to say that's how it happens, but that's how it feels. With auteur development, one person's unique perspective on the world and people stands out, and that's fresh and interesting. It allows for a window into the mind of the creator, and they become inseparable from their work. We are connecting with them as much as we are their characters in game. It's as much a story about their creation as it is a story about them. We mainly consume art to connect. So logically, it makes sense that this is potentially better art. If the creator's sense of style aligns well with the consumer's, they are able to produce works which appeal to and connect with that individual more than any other work could hope to do. If they find the same things interesting and have similar views on people in the world, then they will most likely resonate more easily through the art. It may sound like they target a smaller number of people due to the way they are developed, but that is not the case. Those I mentioned earlier have created some of the largest and most important games of recent memory. Some studio heads and publishers think that they must target the broadest audience by ensuring everything is relatable to all, but that's not necessarily true. Auteur works are still coming from a person who amasses experiences just like everyone else. The games just have the personality, life experiences, and most importantly, the self-expression of that one person instead of everyone's. Anyone can understand and sympathize with just about anyone else if they are able to come to understand how that person got there and the things they have gone through. Therefore, many auteur works still have a very large potential audience. People are always interested in the unique perspective of another, which is part of the reason why we even bother to communicate with one another and make friends. That presentation may be seen as weird, but if people are interested enough in the general concept, they'll play the game, and if the game is well made, there's a good chance they'll enjoy it. Maybe not the same chance as these more general games, but if they do enjoy it, there's a much larger chance that game will become one of their favorites. If you can get people in the door, good things will happen. You just have to have faith in the developer and the idea. From a solely artistic perspective, auteur games also clearly have the advantage. As we have already discussed, the consumer gets to see more of the creator's unique artistic vision. People get to see more of their personality and the way they like to do things. There's more insight into their frame of mind and the things they see as important. The messages being presented are also much clearer and unmuddled by opposing artistic views. What the author has to say on any given subject is made apparent to the player. They can place their own ideas in the game because they find them interesting or want to explore them. No one is going to get in their way to tell them that they can't add something because they don't like the idea, they don't think others will like the idea, or because they have their own ideas for what the story needs to be and what needs to happen and be explored. They can potentially push boundaries, implement something never before seen, or be controversial. There's more experimentation in these types of games. A singular creator is really able to take a step back and think about the best way to communicate their message. They are able to communicate in new and unconventional ways because their focus is on the entire product instead of one aspect. It also helps they have a message in the first place and weren't simply told by the higher-ups to make a specific game. Not only can they get interesting with how they communicate with the player, but they can also more accurately express their vision through their chosen methods. A single creative entity is able to shape everything the way they want it to be. They are able to craft the game more, making it more of their own and further expressing their ideas. Everything also just works in tandem better. Everything can play off everything else and make everything more consistent. A more unified product and message can be created by giving everything a meaning and purpose, presenting a more refined experience. This all does mean some people will be alienated. Some won't get it, and may even think it's the worst thing they've ever seen. Which it very well could be. Being auteur doesn't guarantee good quality. Quality is still going to fall mainly on the skill and effectiveness of the person in charge, and the people working with them. The Room is a famous example of that. Tommy Wiseau is an auteur director, but The Room certainly isn't good. He had a difficult time expressing and translating his thoughts into a coherent movie that people could follow and understand. It also didn't help that he wasn't quite there yet in terms of directorial or actorial talent. Even if it is good, people can still be alienated. People who can't catch on to what the auteur is attempting to communicate, or who simply don't vibe with the personality or views of the director, will likely rate the work very poorly. There's also this kind of phenomenon in which people cannot seem to handle the unfamiliar, which I am very aware might just be my bias on the subject. I don't quite know what to make of it yet, but they seem to stay away from any auteur work and stick only to the straightforward conventional stuff. This may be a fear of something new, or it could be that they have trouble comprehending new things. It may also be that they cannot connect with these creators the same way that others can. Or maybe they view the conventional as the right way to do things, and anything that strays from that predefined path is doing something wrong, and therefore deserves a low grade. Perhaps they have very defined ideas for what a piece of art should be, and anything that does not fit within those parameters is labeled a failure. Regardless, there are in fact some people that will be alienated by this style of creator. However, I must again stress that I believe the benefits of this style far outweigh the detriments. The uber popular everyone can relate to and like this game is what the publishers and developer heads are looking for. They want the next Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed. The reality is that there's only so much space for these games on the market, and the vast majority of games that aim for this come up short. However, these are the games that keep getting greenlit, because this is the only thing people at the top care about. With some exceptions, of course. Sometimes, studios do make games simply because they want to and get everyone on board while still being developed by committee, and auteur games are still around. It's always obvious when a whole studio is behind the idea of a game, with a recent example being the new God of War. One can clearly see the great care that was put into that game, and that everyone was basically on the same page in its creation. It's difficult for these team-designed games to say anything truly deep and meaningful. Auteur directors are able to delve deep into a single idea or a character's thoughts and motivations. In huge products developed by large teams, more often than not, the game tackles much broader issues without being able to explore anything in depth. It is difficult to explore something in the same way when everyone has different ideas on what is being explored and its characteristics. These games will typically not contain any revelation or some new and interesting perspective. They will usually only tell a standard story that is relatable to just about anyone. It is so difficult for everyone to be on the same page. Everyone has different ideas about how the world works. Everyone will want to tell a different story and take that story and characters in a direction that differs from all others. No one person can really get personal with the characters and story they're presenting. To truly understand where another person is artistically coming from is not easy, because the story has yet to be presented and explained. The ideas have yet to be expressed, and are not in a good, digestible format. They must anticipate what is to come, and if not everyone is on the same page, we get games like we've been talking about. Auteurism is kind of a lost art in the video game industry. In the beginning, just about everything was auteur, but with the vast amounts of limitations in their technology, they couldn't do much with it. How much of the human experience can you really represent with Pac-Man age technology? As video gaming grew, team size grew as well, and the creative responsibility was dispersed among the team. This trend continues up till today, where we have the largest teams and budgets we've ever seen. Video gaming never really had an era where auteurs could shine. It's not something that we think about often, but the video game industry grew up quick. A console generation isn't much time. The consoles that we call classic aren't that old. People working in the industry during the NES era are still working now. Video games have had very little time to figure things out, and auteurism in games is no different. The time where auteurism had the most potential to succeed was short-lived. There were inklings in the fourth generation, but it really didn't start picking up steam until the PS1 days, and didn't reach its zenith until the PS2. It has been on the downfall ever since, as budgets and team size have absolutely skyrocketed. On the bright side, I'd say we've at least stopped the bleeding, and maybe even have reversed it a bit as of late. If you've made it this far into the video, and you are in any way resonating with anything I'm saying, or you typically don't go out of your way to play these kinds of games, then I urge you to give one a shot every so often. That's honestly the best way to help out. If you find something that piques your interest, but it looks strange, and isn't being discussed in the mainstream, don't be afraid to try it. You may end up hating it, but you may also end up playing something that speaks to you like nothing else. It may even change your whole perception on what a video game can be. That's certainly happened to me more than once. I suppose all I'm asking is to consider them instead of brushing them off in favor of the few massively budgeted titles that release a year. I believe auteurism to be important in any art form, not only for the sake of advancement, but also for new creative ways of storytelling, speaking to people, and for the unique ways in which they can create an experience that people cannot get elsewhere. Hey guys, Mitopphic here. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it, and leave a comment down below if you feel so inclined. Alright, I think that's all for now. Mitopphic, signing off.